It is the regular meeting of the West Lafayette Community School Corporation Board of Trustees for Monday, July the 10th, 2023. It is 5:31 p.m. First, I need to introduce some visitors to our table tonight. We have Ms. Jane Herndon with Ice Miller. We also have Ms. Jessica Billingsley with Church, Hiddle, and Antrim. You may notice that Dr. Yin is absent this evening. She is traveling, and because a referendum is on our agenda, she is not eligible to participate virtually. We had intended for her to be able to at least call in and observe and speak, but communication or the technology has not been her friend today. So she has submitted a written statement to Mrs. Austin, the secretary, to read on her behalf this evening, and may or may not be following via live stream if she's able to. And then with that, I also need to read the following statement before we begin. Robert's Rules of Order is our agreed parliamentary process in Board Bylaw 161. During my time on the board, meetings have been run in a fairly informal version of Robert's Rules, which is appropriate because we are a small board. This informal meeting structure used by my predecessor as chair seemed to work well and result in efficient meeting, and so I had elected to continue it over the past 18 months in my role as board chair. In the interest of maintaining focus on our students and schools, professionalism, civility, and to ensure that all members are heard, I recognize that this is time for change to a more strict adherence to our agreed parliamentary process. Each member has a Robert's Rules cheat sheet at their place. I invite you to refer to it, but we'll also recap some key differences you may notice this evening. Mrs. Austin, as secretary of the board, has agreed to serve as our meeting timekeeper. At the start of each agenda item, members may propose a time limit for member statements on that agenda item. That time limit, if approved by majority, will only apply to that agenda item. Members of the community who sign up to speak will be held to guidelines stated in Board Policy 167.3 as it relates to public comment, including a 3-minute limit for their remarks. Mrs. Austin, I ask that you give every speaker a hand raise when they have 30 seconds remaining so they may conclude their comments. No participant in this meeting may speak before receiving acknowledgement from the board chair. If you would like to speak, please raise your hand. I will address each person by their title and last name for officers and preferred prefix and name for other members. Each member will be given the opportunity to speak before any other member may speak a second time. Please keep your comments concise and germane to the topic. As board chair, I will determine if additional rounds of comments are productive. Generally speaking, the member who made the motion will be the first acknowledged to speak if they choose to. If at any point of time a member is distracted by a disruption of those observing the meeting, they may call for a point of privilege. I, as the chair, will ask for the disruption to cease. The disruptive person or persons may be asked to leave the meeting if they are not willing or able to cease the disruption. If at any point a member wishes to end discussion, they may call the vote. And I, as board chair, will recognize that motion and make a decision to either direct the vote or guide any additional comments. I am certain that this will be a learning curve for all of us, and I ask for your patience and extension of grace as I am learning right along with you. I hope the information I have left at your seat is helpful. With that, we're going to move on, and I will entertain a motion for agenda item 1. Moved by Mr. Marley. Second by Mrs. Mumford. Please note there is one change to the agenda. Item number 9, the one immediately after item 8, is marked as no exhibit. There is actually an exhibit, a calendar that's been put together that was uploaded to the website, but was not available at the time the agenda was posted. So that exhibit outlines what the proposed adjusted work session calendar, and meeting calendar of the Board of Trustees is. Are there any other changes to the agenda? Mrs. Mumford.
My understanding is the permission to apply for and accept annually federal grants is the same thing. There is a document that was posted to the website and shared in the packet. So there is an exhibit on that one as well.
Mrs. Roth, can you verify that there's an exhibit for that item? There's a memo?
An exhibit.
Okay. There is a memo. Is it from you or Mrs. Cronk?
It was included in the board packet. I do not have the memo with me.
Okay.
I have a copy of it digitally.
Okay. So there is a memo connected to that one as well. Any other adjustments to the agenda? Okay. All those in favor of approving this evening's agenda, please indicate with the show of hands. Please note that all members voted in the affirmative, Mrs. Julian, and that motion passes. I'll entertain a motion on agenda item 2.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Schott.
Second.
Second by Mr. Marley. Are there any questions or comments about the minutes of the June 12th, 2023 regular board meeting of the Board of Trustees? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving these minutes, please indicate with a show of hands. That motion carries 7-0, Mrs. Julian. 6-0. I will entertain a motion for item 3.
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Mumford, second by Mr. Marley. Are there any questions or comments about the minutes from our July 5th work session? All those in favor of approving the minutes from the July 5th work session, please indicate with a show of hands. That motion carries 6-0, Mrs. Julian. We have no unfinished business on the agenda tonight. We'll move on to communications from the audience. These will be in the order that they have signed up this evening. I would invite first Doug Masson. Mr. Masson, I want a microphone so our live stream can hear you. So we're going to borrow one tonight.
Good afternoon. Doug Masson, 3100 Hamilton Street. I'm here today to urge you to move forward on the school funding referendum. Failing to renew it would be catastrophic for the school and the community. As you all know, it represents 18% of our funding, and if we want to keep arts, music, extracurriculars, quality teaching, and all the things that make our schools great, we need to get this done. Out of 290 school districts, we get the third lowest amount of funding from the state. As Caleb Mills said, he's the father of Indiana's common school system. As he said in 1848, there's but one way to secure good schools, and that's to pay for them. Not much has changed. And if we want great schools in our community, we have to make it happen locally. And now's the time to do it. The 2023 elections are dedicated to municipal elections, and this is a local issue. So we don't need this to somehow get mixed up with national politics in 2024. If you do vote to move forward with the referendum, we need to educate the public and keep the message simple and straightforward, because the state mandated ballot language is complicated. It's long, it's structured to use percentages that magnify the impact of the tax rate, and it doesn't allow the school to make clear that the rate will remain unchanged with a yes vote. If voters get to the voting booth without already knowing what the issue is, the required language raises a very real possibility that they'll be confused as to what they're voting for and what they're voting against. And it's pretty simple. We're voting to retain the current tax rate so we can continue to have excellent schools in West Lafayette. Nothing more, nothing less. My kids have graduated, but the issue remains important to me because it's important to the community, not just to the students our schools educate. Just yesterday in the Muncie Star Press, Michael Hicks, Ball State economist, wrote that the share of the economy allocated to education is one of the biggest factors in an area's prosperity. 175 years ago, Caleb Mills was on the same track when he urged awaken the public mind, concentrated on the question, am I not interested in the proper education of all that are socially and politically connected to me? The answer is yes. We should renew the referendum, not just for our students, not just for our schools, but for the continued well-being of our community. And I'll close by saying I'm happy to volunteer however you need me, by knocking on doors, distributing literature, making phone calls, sending postcards, whatever you need. Just let me know how I can help.
Thank you, Mr. Masson. Moving on to the second to sign up, Mary Dell Forbes.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you to the school board members here. I am Mary Dell Forbes. I am a current proud English teacher at the high school, freshmen and juniors, and I am a proud alum or mom of 3 alums. Many moon ago, I had a former life as a local reporter who covered school boards. I covered them here in Tippecanoe County. I also covered them in Howard and Grant counties. And West Side always impressed me. Westside always had its act together. They were the first to ratify the contract consistently. They had their pulse on the legislature, and they were efficient in their business. Frankly, the current state of affairs makes me sad. The fact that you, Madam Chair, have to strictly adhere to Robert's Rules of Order says it all. The goal here for all of us collectively is clear. We need to pass the referendum. It's approximately 1/5 of our budget, 18%. So we need to get our act together, and I implore you to be the servant leaders we elected you to be. In order to do that, I would ask that you implement the 3 Ps. 1, be prepared. Do your research, ask your questions ahead of time, and don't do so the night before. Be proactive, know what the legislature is up to and what we need as a school district. And finally, importantly, be positive. Recent squabbling over class sizes, for example, that's short-sighted. If the referendum doesn't pass, our class sizes will balloon. So what does it matter more, being right and advancing your agenda, or making sure that we don't lose 18% of our working budget? As I say to students, I don't care who started it. You need to stop now. This is West Side, where the community cares about education. Let's show them why we need this referendum and why the taxpayers should pass it and why we deserve their continued support. Thank you.
Up next, Alan Karpick.
My name is Alan Karpick, and I live at 3208 Covington Street in West Lafayette. My former board colleagues and all of you on the school board, administrators and others that are at the table today, you've heard this refrain before, but it bears repeating to everyone in attendance and everybody in attendance tonight. A highly effective school board does 3 things. It recruits, hires, and ultimately works closely with the superintendent. It creates and sets policy for the district and understands and manages the fiscal needs of the school system, creates, sets policy for the district and understands and manages the fiscal needs of the school system. And none of these 3 roles is more important necessarily than the other, but they all work together to do one thing: create the best opportunities for our kids. And during my time on the board, I was fortunate to have been part of the past 2 referendums, and looking back, it was the best of times in my experience on the board. And it was a great time for this district to come together. It takes political action to pass the referendum, but it all starts tonight with all of you choosing to begin this process. Based on the results in 2010 and 17, you know that there is support for our schools. You know that, and you know there's support for regarding our fiscal needs. Any opposition wants us to cut as Doug said, cut our arts, music, PE, sports, and extracurricular programs, in addition to challenges in the classroom. But you must maintain and enhance our award-winning program and our offerings and the great things that is this district. So look around the room tonight, and you're going to see that there is a lot of support for this. It is a beautiful July evening, and yet a large group here believes in our district, that our teachers, administrators, and most importantly, our students have what it takes to deliver and produce the best educational outcomes. But this should not be about political posturing for the board or the district. It must be about our kids and the opportunities in front of them. By passing this referendum this year, you are doing the responsible thing. We've talked about the need for the less noise in 2024 and the opportunity to do it this year. That's very, very important. It is the most responsible fiscal action this board can do, and that's very plain and simple. Okay, please work together. If not on everything moving forward, work together on this. You are currently working with the best central office team I've seen in my time in this district. You have a dedicated group of administrators that want what is best for kids and teachers that have been proven time and again well worthy of your support. This district has never been in a better position. So take this all into account as we work forward to voting yes on November 7th. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next, Gail Charlotte.
I timed myself out at a little over 3 minutes, so I'm going to speak really fast like an auctioneer. I'm Gail Charlotte. I am the proud parent of 2 West Lafayette grads, and I am a citizen here in the district. Let me say at the outset, I will vote for passage of the referendum. I will do all in my power to make sure my friends vote for it. I will do that not because I have children in our schools, but because I believe in the West Lafayette Community School Corporation. And I will do all I can to support the work of our teachers and staff and the children they educate. I have served on this board. There are at least 3 former board members in the audience tonight. I served from 2000 to 2004. In case you're not familiar with that time period, I was a part of the board that dealt with the dismissal of the superintendent and the subsequent lawsuit that was filed. Due to the diligence and the quiet but strong leadership of board president Karen Springer, that lawsuit was dismissed finally in federal court, saving this corporation millions of dollars. I'll be honest, we were not a united board. We each held powerful opinions, and there were some strong personalities, me too, on that board. We faced intense public scrutiny, and there were outspoken citizens who came to our meetings and expressed some very forceful opinions. It was not easy to be a board member, but we were united. Our votes were taken after much honest yet civilized discussion and were nearly always 7-0. That doesn't mean we always agreed 100%. It means we supported the rest of the board members, even if we didn't agree with them. We trusted and supported our leadership team. As a result, following Springer's leadership, we followed all legal parameters and directives. We did the work we were elected to do, and we always put the children of our corporation first. Thank goodness this was all before the explosion of social media. Can you imagine what a disaster it would have been if any one of us could have gone on our personal website or Facebook page and openly criticized other board members or leadership? The West Lafayette School Corporation would have lost that lawsuit, but we stood united and we followed all the correct procedures because we had an obligation to the students, teachers, and staff. If any member of the community continues to spread disinformation or half-truths, this referendum will fail and all the taxpayers will blame all of you, not just the specific board members like you might think. I just want to close by saying, listen to what your consultant said and work together. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I know the time limit is hard. It's hard. It's hard for all of us. No, up next, Lisa Mills.
Thank you so much for taking time. I'm Lisa Mills, and I am working with Mary Dell and the rest of the mighty English department here at Westside, as well as being a mother of 2 graduates and a member of the community for over 20 years. So I actually want to speak about the TAG grants, not the referendum, although it's all kind of, tied up together, isn't it? First of all, I saw this on the agenda, and because there have been so many new faces that are here, I kind of wanted to give some background to understand so everyone would be on the same page. 7 years ago, when the state of Indiana began issuing TAG grants to each district, teachers, board members, and our former superintendent, Rocky Killian, met in discussion to talk about the nature of the stipend and how it would be dispersed. From the beginning of this conversation, we all agreed that student success is a group effort derived from everyone's commitment to doing their job well. This begins with the bus drivers. They are the first people to see our kids when they get on the bus. They transport our athletes safely from meets and games, and they safely deliver our students back home again every evening, including our youngest kiddos, who they will not drop off if there is not an adult there to meet them, to keep them safe. Our support staff includes secretaries who keep track of attendance, order books. I mean, it goes on and on. Basically, they keep our doors open. I'm going to mention a few names here, so shout out to Kate Springer for juggling so many duties at the junior-senior high school graciously and professionally. These ladies are the very first faces that parents and visitors see when they come in our schools. Our custodians drop everything when there's an upset stomach on second floor or a bloody nose in the gym. They have a job that never ends, keeping our hallways and classrooms and restrooms clean and disinfected. The kitchen cooks, I have never seen them not smile at our kids when they go through the lunch line. Our school nurses manage hundreds of health plans and are vigilant at keeping our buildings healthy. This last group is one I feel most passionately about, because I worked as a paraprofessional at Harrison High School before I started my job here at West Lafayette. It was the hardest job I have ever done. The morning of my second day, I cried at the breakfast table, telling my husband that I just didn't think I could handle this challenge. The young man I was paired with deserved the very best care. He was a wonderful, hardworking young man, but figuring out his needs, how to communicate, and how to overcome his challenges, how to overcome his challenges was very hard. Our paraprofessionals are the very backbone of our classrooms. So I'm just going to say, learning in West Lafayette can't happen without all these people. So for that reason, discussion decided to a token of appreciation for everyone, and I'm proud that West Lafayette has done that. I'm sorry. Okay. Thank you so much, and I hope you'll continue to extend that TAG grant to all our employees.
On to the next item, Don Collar.
You may be on if she's going to read hers. She might be.
I'm here to speak in favor of the referendum. My name is Don Collar. I live at 427 Jennings Street. I've been a taxpayer in West Lafayette since 1978. And the West Lafayette Public Schools have always been a great school system. And my wife and I have a son that graduated in 2000 and a daughter who graduated in 2006. Someone set them up to have that opportunity to get the education that they received in this school system. That's why I live in this community. One of the things that I've always thought about West Lafayette Public Schools is that you get an independent school or a private school, a prep school education at public school cost. And I think that's a phenomenal trade. I don't think it's a trade-off. I think it's a trade. Someone did something for my kids, and I think it's important that we do something for somebody else's kids in the future. And I cannot understand why anybody would jeopardize 18% of the budget and jeopardize future planning that could be done now rather than have to wait under the stress of another election after this coming election. It makes no sense to me at all. One of the things that I noticed, I have a couple neighbors, as we all do, One of them lives across the street. He plays a cello and runs cross country and track. The other one lives next door to me, and she runs cross country track and plays the violin. We went to the concert this spring when both those young people were doing the end of the year concert. The thing that impressed me most about the concert was the graduates and where they were going to school and what they were going to attempt to do with their lives. Without the money from the referendum, and it's not a tax increase, it's just 18%. You're not asking for anything to raise anybody's taxes. This is status quo. I do not understand why there is even a question on this particular issue. So I urge you all to vote for this referendum. And I don't know if I can pronounce Doug's last name correctly, but I will join with Doug in any way that I can help to promote the community to vote at a higher rate of 95% for the last referendum. I'd like to see it be higher this time. People need to understand that their children in this district had an opportunity because of other people who paid ahead. We need to do the same thing for this current generation and generations to come. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Collin. Just as explanation, Mr. Hamilton is attempting to get Dr. Yin, if he's able to, in the meeting. Up next is Rachel Sandberg.
Good evening. I'm Rachel Sandberg. I've been a high school English teacher since 2001, and I've been here since 2018. I also have 4 children, 3 of whom are in West Side schools right now, and 1 preschooler who's coming. So I'm invested here for the very long haul. I urge you to vote to move forward with the referendum and would like to offer some thoughts and questions for your consideration. There are questions regarding transfer students. This makes me nervous because a perk I was offered when deciding to join Team Scarlet and Gray was that my kids could come with me. So my question to you is, will limiting transfer numbers affect our ability to recruit quality staff? Regarding parameters for class sizes, I urge you to strongly avoid setting numerical values into our referendum language. I'm a member of our teachers union leadership, I'm vice president, and cannot stress enough that setting numbers would very well tie our hands when having discussions with our administration to solve problems that we're having within our classrooms. For example, in our department, 1 grade level was able to work with admin to reduce class numbers for a certain subset of students to 15 students who were struggling learners, which resulted in larger numbers in some other classes. This was a choice we were able to make. Personally, I was given the option to have either large classes and fewer class periods to teach, fewer class periods to teach with smaller numbers, or a couple larger classes, only 3 kids more than the other option, and have 6 periods to teach. I chose to have the 5-period day and be able to give myself more time to work to provide quality education for your children. These decisions are different at every grade level for each teacher and based on student needs. To tie specific numbers into the referendum would limit our ability to have these conversations and make changes in the best interest of our students. When my family started to look into moving here, one factor affecting my decision was the divisiveness of our own local community toward our schools. To help me make my decision to come to Westside, I scoured social media and news reports to see which community had the best cohesiveness towards the goal of providing quality education to our young people, and also trusted and supported their school's education professionals. I'm a 3rd-generation educator and can tell you with a certainty that nothing does more to demoralize teachers than to see our leadership divided and contributing to that culture. 6 years ago, I couldn't find any evidence of West Lafayette schools lacking support from its community. There were no Facebook groups declaring us versus them mentality, and your referendum numbers spoke volumes. If I were looking at Westside today online, what dirty laundry would I find? I believe that will affect our ability to pass this referendum. I believe that will affect our ability to meet its goals. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry. Up next, we have Laura Marie Williams. And just so everyone's aware, Dr. Yin is on our meeting now. Can you hear us, Dr. Yin?
She cannot hear right now, but they're working on it.
She cannot hear right now, but she can see us. Okay. We're halfway there.
It's fine.
Hi, thank you.
Laura Marie Williams, resident, basically paying into this tax system since the 1970s. My family live at 848 Barlow Street, have a child going into the junior, senior high school. And I'm just here mainly in support of our new school board representatives that the community voted in. The community spoke, and I just encourage you to really peaceably work with the newer school board members. Their questions and they reflect what the people of the West Lafayette community have on their minds. And I just encourage you to embrace and also just have a lot of transparency, because I think in years past there wasn't transparency, and so a lot of the community was frustrated about monies spent that maybe they didn't understand what was happening, and so unfortunately there's some mistrust, and it just takes time to re-earn trust, right? And so I just the school board needs to be comfortable answering questions. The administration needs to be comfortable answering questions. The assistant, I'm sorry, Anna Roth met with me for a couple of months ago regarding issues with the special education department, and that was wonderful. Just so that that atmosphere of openness continues, and that is the norm. Also with the TAG grants, the paraprofessionals really do need a leg up, especially if we're having larger class sizes. I was a little frightened going into this coming year with my child that my child will apparently have to share a paraprofessional with like 6 or 7 other students. And this is pretty concerning. That's maybe too much of a ratio. I mean, I was told that by the special ed administrator in the school. So I'm just concerned that our kids get what they need and monies go to supporting our kids and just for accountability and openness, transparency. So anyway, thank you very much for your work.
Thank you. Okay. The last person speaking tonight on agenda item is Angie Janes.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you. I wanted to bring a picture of my daughter, but everything I have is in a box because I am currently living at 1515 Ravinia for one more week. But I will describe her as having blue sparkly eyes and rosy cheeks and a tiny little mouth that just lights up your life when she smiles at you. She attended Westside schools from kindergarten to winter break of her sophomore year. I'm sharing her story with her permission. After a complicated 3rd grade year, I approached Mrs. Saros with concerns about her 4th grade teacher assignment. My concerns were dismissed and a devastating year for Anna ensued. She became withdrawn and angry. We had her evaluated and she was diagnosed with ADHD and a specific learning disability. But by 5th grade, she had an IEP, was receiving accommodations, and had an extraordinary teacher who worked closely with me to help Anna stay on track. Our cheerful daughter was back. By junior high, however, the school had downgraded her from an IEP to a 504 plan, regular parent meetings ceased, and with multiple teachers, I could not stay on top of all of her needs. For 3.5 years, I met with teachers, administrators, and counselors to find solutions. I ran for school board with ideas of how parents and schools could partner better. The more I learned as I campaigned, the more troubled I became. I learned Anna's experience was not uncommon. I learned class sizes were on the rise, and other parents like me were frustrated that they voted for the referendum to keep class sizes down, but were seeing our kids in classes growing steadily larger. I learned that students with special needs like Anna don't get their accommodations when teachers are overwhelmed with large classes. I also learned that making any statement that did not align with the purchased niche.com reputation of this corporation would be met with hostility rather than a desire to improve. Yet my daughter's experience was not consistent with the niche.com reputation. Her academic progress was in steady decline along with her self-confidence and hope. This January, after a dismal first semester and a teacher who failed to observe an accommodation even after I shared it with her, we pulled Anna out of Westside, away from all her friends and the choir and theater program she loved, to enroll in an online charter school. She is thriving there academically, but she misses her friends, her music, and theater. This is a tragedy. She should be able to be educated by her public school. We have sold our home, and shortly we will no longer be residents of this community because we are not interested in paying for a referendum we will no longer benefit from, and arguably never did. I regret the years I spent fighting with you to try to find solutions for families like mine. I would have much preferred to work with you, but you made it clear to me, and continue to do so with board members Yin, Mumford, and Wong, that you are only interested in boasting or fighting, not listening and improving. You have said it's about the students for you. It's about the students for all of us. It's too late for Anna, but right now there is a little third grader whose life is about to be turned upside down. Give her the resources she will need. Give her hope. Thank you.
Thank you. We will move on to agenda item 4, Teacher Appreciation Grant. You'll hear it referred to as TAG. Dr. Greiner.
Thank you, Mrs. President. PO 3220.01 is the policy that the board has in place ensuring compliance with Indiana code, allowing the district to receive the teacher appreciation grant funds and then to be able to use it in accordance with Indiana code. Each year, the board must adopt the policy concerning the distribution of the teacher appreciation grant. And then the administration must submit that policy to the Indiana Department of Education by September 15th. Our policy has not changed, and it was approved by the Indiana Department of Education last year to be in compliance. And so it's my recommendation that the board vote to approve this policy this evening.
I'll entertain a motion on agenda item 4.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Wong, second by Mrs. Austin. Are there any members who would like to make a comment?
Just to reiterate, it's 10 minutes.
It is 10 minutes. The standard is 10 minutes. The default on Robert's rules is that a individual may speak for 10 minutes and debate on an item. Mr. Wong, you made the motion. Did you want to comment at all? You get the first choice. No? Okay. Anyone else have a comment? Mrs. Mumford.
I would like to make a motion to table the approval of the teacher appreciation grant. I'd like the policy committee to revise policy 3220.1 to focus the tag money on teachers and the state's requirement that these teacher bonus payments depend on their ratings. Staff and administrators, as many in the comments shared, are key. We should be giving them bonuses, paraprofessionals and others, but they should not be linked directly to the tag money, and has been a source of frustration for some teachers. I have been reviewing as many districts as I could find with this same policy, and I have not found another district that has included in their policy to pay everyone the same using their own funds.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? You are making a motion to table? Okay, is there a second for that motion? Okay, hearing none, that motion would fail. Are there any comments on the teacher appreciation grant approval? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving agenda item 4 for the teacher appreciation grant, please indicate with the show of hands. That motion carries 7-0, Mrs. Julian. 6-0, I'm so sorry. 7 is a number in my brain. Moving on to agenda item 5, the personnel report. Dr. Greiner.
So you have in your packet the personnel report, and it is my recommendation that the board approve the personnel report as presented in the packet.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Schott, second by Mr. Marley. Are there any comments or questions about the personnel report this evening? Mrs. Mumford?
What are your plans for filling the position of the DEI coordinator?
As I stated in the Friday notes, we plan to post it, and then we are going to engage with community involvement.
So who will you have serve on the committee, the representative committee? How will you seek involvement in that?
Mrs. Ruth, would you like to expand on that briefly? I know that we're in the very beginning stages of that.
Certainly. The plan currently is to treat it as we would a district-wide position, some form of survey from the community and staff members, and then also representatives from different buildings, maybe parent council, wide representation. It's not specified yet, though, but when we get better ideas, we will include it in Friday notes.
Any other questions or comments about the personnel report? All those in favor of approving the personnel report, please indicate with a show of hands. That motion carries 6-0, Mrs. Julian. Moving on to agenda item 6, Dr. Greiner, designee paperwork.
So you have in your packet and have seen also the resolution allowing the new GLASS director to sign for excessive cost grants as the designee. And so it is my recommendation that the board vote to approve this resolution this evening.
I'll entertain a motion. Moved by Mrs. Austin, second by Mr. Wong. Any comments or questions about designee paperwork, agenda item 6? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor of approving this agenda item, please indicate with a show of hands. This motion carries 6-0, Mrs. Julian. Moving on to permission to apply for and accept annually awarded federal grants, Mrs. Roth.
So this was the memo included in the packet, and it reflects Board Policy 6110. Basically, under this policy, you have to give annual permission to apply for these grants. These are federally awarded grants that are available on an annual basis and are considered non-competitive. We simply have to apply for them. So at this time, I would ask that you consider the request to approve to accept these federal grants.
A motion by Mr. Marley, a second by Mr. Wong. Anyone, any questions or comments about this agenda item? All those in favor of approving the permission to apply for and accept annually awarded federal grants, please indicate with a show of hands. The motion carries 6-0, Mrs. Julian. Moving on to agenda item 7, accounts payable and finance update, Mrs. Cronk.
Claims for the period of June 7th to July 5th, the cutoff for this meeting, total $6,356,631.17, including regular corporation expenses and the Wabash Valley Education Center expenses. Of this amount, $2,349,683.47 were paid toward wages, salaries, and benefits. Please note that the monthly total is higher than normal as our debt service payments are paid in June and December. Expenditures dated for July 5th are the claims held for today's board meeting. Moving on to our preliminary fund report for the month ending June 30th, the Education Fund has a balance of $2,947,328.48, and total funds on hand for the corporation are $21,492,318.47. Fund report is preliminary as we are still working on closing fiscal year end at this time. Please approve the accounts payable finance update as submitted.
I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Austin, second by Mr. Schott. Questions or comments about accounts payable finance update? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor of approving accounts payable finance update agenda item 7, please indicate with a show of hands. That motion carries 6-0, Mrs. Julian. Moving on to agenda item 8, the referendum, adopt the resolution. As we discussed in our June meeting, as well as in our work session of July the 5th. We are here tonight to approve the question that would be placed on the ballot to pursue a renewal of our operating referendum. So we'll begin this with a review of the question. Do you have the, I'm sorry. This is the correct one. So the question that we are proposing here this evening, I'll read just for the benefit of those watching. Shall West Lafayette Community School Corporation continue to impose increased property taxes paid to the school corporation by homeowners and businesses for 8 years immediately following the holding of the referendum for the purpose of retaining and attracting teachers and staff and funding academic programming and operating expenditures with the renewal of the current maximum referendum property tax rate of 37 cents. The property tax increase requested in this referendum was originally approved by the voters in 2017, and if extended, will increase the average property tax paid to the school corporation per year on a residence within the school corporation by, Ms. Herndon, could you give me the percentages? I don't have them on the number. Thank you. The copy I have does not have, if you would please introduce yourself and offer the percentages, I'm missing those. Thank you.
Can I make a
Mm-hmm.
Legally, those percentages are not required in there at this time. We have received, I believe, back from the auditor those percentages, so that information will be sent on to the state.
Okay.
But it's not required that they be in. I just want to make sure.
Thank you. I appreciate the clarification.
It's great that you have.
Yes, thank you. So it would pay to the school corporation per year on a residence within the school corporation by X percent?
46.2% is the percentage that will be placed there.
Okay, and if extended, will increase the average property tax paid to the school corporation per year on a business property within the school corporation by?
41.8%.
Thank you. Could you please introduce yourself so
Sure.
people know who's spoken that?
Sure. My name is Lindsay Simonetto. I'm with Baker Tilly, and we serve as the financial people. We worked alongside the county auditor to put these percentages together. It is a prescribed formula that the DLGF and the state requires being done. And I just want to make sure and mention that it's not these percentages, these 46.2 and 41.8 are not referring to an increase in the total tax bill, but they are actually referring to really the percentage of the referendum as part of what an average taxpayer pays to the school corporation. So it's very confusing the way it's all the legalese and how it has to be worded, but that's really what it's referring to. But
Thank you very much. So that is what we are here to vote on tonight, is approval of that question as read and described. I will entertain a motion. Moved by Mr. Marley, second by Mr. Wong. Do we have any comments or questions on this? Mr. Marley?
Yeah. Jane, I just have a question for you. So this question that's going to be on the ballot, it's misleading. Can we counter that with our own public relations and message? Make sure that the public understands.
Absolutely, and that's very typical because you're absolutely right. This is very difficult for people who are even in the know, like you all, to understand what it means. And I'll just state for the record that the school board has very little ability to change the wording of this question. There are very small parts of this that you have some influence, but otherwise it's dictated by the statute. And I really think that absolutely you should and can go ahead and give information to the community that helps them understand how this will actually affect them.
Right, right. Because it's really a neutral event. No increase. Thank you, Jane. Appreciate it.
Mr. Wong?
We have another version which include the class size for the referendum purpose statement. Is that right?
If you would like to offer, we're currently discussing the question that was read and proposed. If you want to consider changing that, you would make a motion for an amendment to that item. Would you like to make a motion to amend the question at hand?
I'm happy to make the motion.
Yeah, okay, and I think I go second.
Okay, so in this situation, the conversation has to happen with me as the reminder. So you would not like to make a motion to amend. Mrs. Mumford would like to make a motion to amend. Okay, so we'll pause there. So you're talking about a strike and add. You want to strike wording and add wording?
I'd like to make a motion to add reduced class sizes to the referendum question.
Okay. Is there a second for Mrs. Mumford's motion to make an amendment to add the words reduce class sizes? Mr. Wong has seconded that motion. Are there any questions, comments about that? Mrs. Mumford, would you like to speak about that?
My understanding is that the spending plan, the spending plan does talk about maintaining class sizes, but this isn't what the voters see. Maintaining class sizes, which was in the 2017 referendum, is something that has been a priority for our community. It matters to parents, it matters to teachers, and so I would like it to be on the question so that it's at the ballot, so that it's something that we are focused on, as we have seen class sizes trending up over the years instead of, so I'd like to see it reduced.
Okay. Anybody else? Any comments about this item, Mrs. Austin?
I disagree with your interpretation of the facts. With regard to class size, I don't think it's reasonable to count kids in yearbooks and call that data. So I think...
So Mrs. Austin, are you asking for a point of information?
I am asking for a point of information. Thank you.
Dr. Reiner, could you address the class size question that Mrs. Austin has asked for clarification on?
In your Friday notes, we did the comparison that board members asked for 2017 compared to 2022. We saw that kindergarten for that particular year, but we have to remember a school district our size fluctuates from year to year, even more so than a larger corporation like TSC, Hamilton Southeastern, for example. But we saw that for that particular year, the kindergarten was the same size. And we saw that class size averages per class, 20.2 in a class. We saw that depending on the grade level, it ranges from 20 to 24 students, 2017 compared to 2022. We used Skyward data. We took a snapshot from Skyward looking at class rosters, students actually sitting in seats. The overall average from 2017 compared to 2022, we do see that there is a difference of 1.75 for the overall average. And so average across K through 6, 20.2, 2017 compared to 21.9, again, according to Skyward rosters. I want to stress that we recognize that that's a grade level K through 6 average, and we recognize that doesn't mean anything unless you look at situations and you look at individual grade levels and you look at overall trending. We know that central office administrators, building administrators, and teachers through the Teachers Association work at the end of the year through into the beginning of the year to monitor class sizes and to consider whether or not we need to add a teacher. And so I just want to assure you that we will continue that practice. We will continue to collaborate at the central office level, with building level administration, with the corporation Teachers Association, and of course principals at the building level work closely with grade levels that have questionable numbers, and so they're working as well, and then they're represented through the Teachers Association. So we work closely together to understand the needs to ensure that our teachers have the resources they need to meet the needs of our students. We also have added interventionists. So there are intervention teachers at the intermediate school. There are intervention teachers at the elementary school through Title I funds and or through the education fund. And so with that, we would have the ability to even work with the stakeholders to see how we might put teachers in classrooms with the staff we have now. That would be dialogue that we would want to have with our teacher teams, with our building administrators who are working closely with their building level team. And of course, we would, like we do so well, engage very closely with our Teachers Association through the discussion process. So I can assure the board that we will continue that dialogue. We will continue that collaborative process. And we could even get some input from parents through surveying in the future, because there's been some mention of that desire by the board. Additionally, I will post that comparison if the board desires on the Q&A of the website. Okay, and so we can get that information that the board has as well. And I appreciate the questions.
Okay. Does that answer your question, your request? Okay. Mr. Schott, it is still Mrs. Mumford's turn. She was interrupted by a point of information. Do you have anything else you would like to say? Okay, Mr. Schott?
I'm just curious, maybe for Jane, does saying reduce class sizes back us into a corner at all? And that just seems awfully like a broad stroke.
I was hoping you were going to ask me a question. I've not seen a school corporation use the word reduce class size. Now, that's going by memory, not actually going back and looking. They have used the word manage class size, and I think that is what you probably used, your district used back in 2017. Part of the reason that school corporations tend to use that manage class size is, in a way, the question you're bringing up is because people interpret that different ways. And when you put reduced class size, there certainly is a political expectation, if not a reality, that every parent will want to experience a reduced class size. And I think, as you heard from your superintendent, especially in a smaller district, that's not always possible. And that's why most districts use more of a managed class size opposed to reduced class size. That, I will tell you also, I don't know that that has been approved by the DLGF. I'm more than willing legally to, if the board, the majority of the board decide they want to do that, I'm more than happy to go back and ask that question. But I have not seen that wording reduce class size off the top of my head. So if somebody goes and finds it, I'm not saying it's not out there, but I'm not familiar with that off the top.
Thank you. Mr. Wong?
Yeah, I will share something. So regarding the class size, that's top, one of two top questions I collect from the community members when I talk to them about referendums. And many people want, we have a very reasonable class size. It will be good for students. They can get personal attention, and it's also good for teachers. So teacher can give timely feedback, and they can spend more time one-to-one. And also, from my personal experience, and I already graduated from high school many years, but I still vividly remember there's a teacher. Just when I was struggling with something, the teacher stopped by and then showed me, hey, there's, did you try that? And you can do it. So there's only about 5-second interactions, but I still remember that. So I even forgot his name and the question, but I still remember that eye contact. So only 5 seconds. So I think the class size, I think it matters. And, and also when I think about from teacher's point of view, that teacher must be observe me for sometimes. They understand how progress of my learning and where's my struggling, so he can instruct me, encourage me on that things. So from my personal experience and also some feedback from our communities, I think the classroom size is quite important. And this is, but I back to Jane's the idea, the management class size, and I think that's neutral language. If I would prefer to use that language in case we want to have that down over here. And this is kind of, the question is something like a contract with our communities. We need their support, and this is our commitment, what we are going to do with that money. So I think if we put the class size over here, that's a kind of bold and undeniable statement or commitment. That means we are going to use this community support to accomplish these things. But I said back a little bit, I'm a layman. And if you, and also the teacher say that you guys are professional educators, if you say class size are not really that important on these questions, I'm flexible with that. But I just, I think if we put that on that, we will have win more yes vote for our referendum. So that's my opinion regarding this class size. Thank you.
Just to clarify to all members, we are currently discussing the agenda or the amendment to the original agenda item, the original question that Mrs. Mumford has proposed, which is to add the language to, I'm sorry, could you repeat it?
To add it, to reduce class.
To reduce class sizes. So that is what we are discussing right now, is her proposed amendment to add the language to reduce class sizes to this motion. The only member we have not heard from is Mrs. Austin. Mrs. Austin, would you like the floor?
Yes, please. The full board reviewed the question and had the opportunity to ask all their questions or make suggestions on the language during the executive session on May 22nd. The presentation, which was prepared by Ice Miller and given to each member on paper, included 2 slides with variations on the referendum question in large print. We then received a memo from Mrs. Cronk in the June board packet that explained the need to be prepared to discuss the question at the meeting. The questions last renewal and this renewal were both provided publicly at that meeting. The board voted to proceed, and Mrs. Cronk did exactly what she said she would do and sent the question for prior review and approval to the DLGF. I feel that all of us have had ample time to examine the question and to make suggestions, and that amending the question at this time will cause an undue burden on our central office staff and delay our progress toward the referendum. So I would encourage people to vote no on the amendment.
With that, let's go ahead and vote on this suggested amendment. Again, that is the amendment proposed by Mrs. Mumford to add language to this agenda item. All of those in favor of approving the language addition that Mrs. Mumford has requested, please indicate with a show of hands. Okay, 2, all of those opposed. Okay. In favor are Mr. Wong and Mrs. Mumford. Opposed are Mr. Schott, Mrs. Austin, Mr. Marley, and myself. That motion to amend fails. We are going to move on to the original agenda item, which is agenda item 8, referendum, adopt resolution. That is already on the floor. Would anybody like to speak about that? Mr. Wong.
One more question regarding, just to clarify, you say these 46.2% and the 41.8%, these are optional? We don't need to keep them on the ballot?
No, they have to be on the ballot.
Oh, okay.
They don't have to be in the resolution.
Oh,
They
okay,
come
gotcha.
from the auditor. Sometimes at the time of this meeting, we have that information, sometimes we don't.
Okay,
So
gotcha.
the statute allows you to adopt it the way it is with the blanks. And then once the auditor's certification comes, we put those percentages in there, or the DLGF puts those percentages in there. In your case, the auditor was quick to respond, and we actually have those percentages. So that's why they were able to be shared tonight.
It was very clear explanation. Thank you, appreciate. Can I have another?
Anything else?
Yes, another, I say the two question, to hesitate, I collect from the committee member. Another things regarding how we use this revenue, about 7 millions. And I think there's good news is we have some new Indiana code, specifically decide specifically ask the school board to detail the spending, which is IC 20-46-1-8, which means from 2024, my understanding is from 2024, the 7 millions we collect from referendum will be a detailed document how we spend that money. So is that true? And I want Michelle can have more clear explanations. Thank you.
Part of the new referendum process from legislation passed, can you tell me how long ago? I don't know how long ago. It was a couple years
2
ago.
years,
Yeah.
2?
Yeah, governing new referendums after that legislation, we are required to pass a revenue spending plan, which details what we plan to spend it on. And you have that revenue spending plan that we are suggesting for this upcoming year. That is passed every year during the budget process, so the board will have say in what that revenue spending plan looks like. We'll bring you a recommendation, and obviously you will have input on that every year. And those expenditures are actually spent directly from the referendum fund, which is Fund 160. So it is tracked from actual expenditure codes in the referendum fund.
And it'll be audited.
And it will be audited
each year.
Based upon
That's
that
great.
revenue spending plan.
Would you mind to compare with what our current, preferably legitimate ways, how we handle that accounting in terms of how to financially handle currently, how we do that, and what will happen after this 2024?
So previously, in years previous to 2023, it was perfectly acceptable to transfer cash from the referendum fund to the education fund and operations fund to fund those things that we said we were going to spend the money on. And that was done prior to this year. This year, we actually budgeted within the referendum fund those expenditures. And so teachers are being paid directly from the referendum fund. Custodians are being paid directly from the referendum fund. Bus drivers being paid directly from the referendum fund. So once we have our financial statements every 6 months this year, you will see actual expenditures and not just transfers from the referendum fund in the Form 9.
Last question, sorry, so many questions. So basically, every year when we do budgetings, we will take this into consideration, right? Okay, thank you, that's all. Thank you, appreciate it.
Any other comments? Okay. Dr. Yin, I know that you wanted to make a statement. Do you want to do that now or following the vote? Or did you want to speak? I'm not sure what your preference is on timing. Not sure we can hear you.
Try again, Dr. Yin.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great, thanks. So first, I would like to follow up with the class size discussion a little bit. And I think, I also agree that, appropriate class size is important for high quality education. And actually, I like the idea of using the managed class size because I feel as I said last time, and it depends. And for different grades, different subjects for students with different needs, that issue, the class size may differ. And also, I think is actually the truth. Without the referendum, we won't be able to maintain the class size or reduce the class size. And I remember I heard that if we don't have the referendum, we have to significantly increase the class size. And so, that's just what I thought when I hear the class size discussion, because I couldn't chime in at that time. I like to add what I thought. And I also prepared a statement and for this referendum issue in general. And it's a little bit long. And if it's okay, I'll read it now. Is that okay?
Please, go ahead, Dr. Yin.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the generous referendum support from our community in the past 2 rounds, and our students excel in various ways: academic performance, sports, music, arts, and social impacts. Our district ranks the top in Indiana and around the top 300 in the nation, and around the top 100 for STEM schools according to U.S. News. The salary of our teachers and the staff members are among the most competitive in Indiana. We couldn't have achieved what we have done without our community's generous referendum support. I believe that continuing the referendum will be necessary for our schools for several reasons. First, we have one of the lowest funding per student in Indiana. And second, our district is small. which brings some advantages, but at the same time, the small size of our district make our education costs per student higher than the larger district due to our lack of new effect. Third, we have rich and high quality extracurriculum activities, which is costly. First, we should compensate our hardworking teachers and staff members even better, especially given the high inflation. I believe that the referendum will be helpful for the residents with or without school-age kids. With the continuous referendum fund, we can continue our high-quality education, high-quality ECA, high-quality and sufficient teacher staff, and we can also reduce the class size of the bigger ones. Better education is beneficial for the residents with the school-age kids. The houses in our district have been highly needed in our area, boosting their prices. Better education can further increase the property value in our districts, which will benefit the residents without the school-age kids as well. I believe that wisely spending the fund is important, and the administration is the key player in the spending. Dr. Greiner and his team are open-minded and take actions to address various problems. They have made a lot of great improvements in the past years and a half. For example, improved the community engagement in decision-making, improved the transparency, increased the teacher staff appreciation and the compensation, improved the student parents community appreciation, hired attorneys who are friendly to our community and charge reasonably, etc. There are always things for us to continue to improve. Our current administration is willing to listen to the community and value community feedback. I'm fully confident that the current administration will cherish the generous contribution of our community and wisely spend the fund to make our district even better for all kids and consequentially better for all residents in our district. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Yin. Perhaps a parliamentarian would disagree with me, but I was not able to find any direction on allowing a remote statement to be read. So I appreciate the board accommodating Dr. Yin sharing her thoughts. Again, the item that we are discussing is agenda item 8, referendum, adopt resolution. Mr. Marley, I believe you are the only member who's not spoken on it. Do you have anything you would like to say?
I was thinking that I asked Jane earlier about countering the language.
Oh, you did. Thank
Gonna be
you.
on the
I'm
ballot.
sorry.
I think I'm covered.
You're covered. Every member has spoken. I'd like to proceed with the vote at this time. All those in favor of approving agenda item 8, referendum with the question at hand, please indicate with a show of hands. That motion carries 6-0. Mrs. Julian. We're going to move on to the next agenda item, which is about the scheduling of work sessions. Technically speaking, I learned over the weekend that this work session, because we are amending a vote that we did last time, should have been old business. I left it where it is in new business. We're looking again at a proposed calendar. We approved our meeting schedule in the last meeting. In between when this was posted online and this meeting this evening, we had one additional change added to this. This is date of meeting September 20th, 2023, and that is the public hearing on the 2023 budgets and finance updates. That is scheduled for 6 p.m. That is, as I understand it, Mrs. Crunk, a legally mandated meeting that we hold.
We have to have public hearings. That's just been consistent practice of this district to have it a work session towards the end of September for that purpose.
To talk through public hearings.
And
Thank
we'd
you.
already discussed that with Mr. Reuter.
Right. Thank you. So that has been an addition that people have not seen. I want to point that out in case you had looked at that. It should be updated on Box Now if you'd like to go take a glance at that. Also, I want to point out to you that there was one shift from when we last approved this. The March meeting has been moved to March 4th. That is to avoid spring break, which is the following week. The only other changes to this from our last approval and our last meeting was to add the work sessions the Friday mornings prior to our regular meetings from 7 to 8 a.m. That would be here in the LGI room. That would be an opportunity for any member and all members to come and pose their questions about the month's work in advance of the meeting. I would entertain a motion on this updated calendar. Mr. Wong has made a motion. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Schott. Discussions or comments about this newly updated calendar?
Yeah.
Mr. Wong.
Just quick question, quick comments. So I think we moved the working session to the morning time from 7 to 8, right? Yeah, I think probably that's the only thing we work a long time to find out. But the only possible downside I can think of probably is a little bit too early for our community members to join that meeting, to listen to that meeting. So that's probably the only possible downsides I can think of about that. But seems that's probably the only option we have. Okay, thank you.
The work sessions will be live streamed and recorded, so individuals would have the ability to view that after the fact. Any other questions or comments? Mrs. Mumford?
Yeah, I would like to understand why the 7 a.m. was chosen, and if you are worried that parents and teachers won't be able to attend because of the time that it is.
Dr. Greiner and I discussed this at length. Would you like to kind of explain the logic, or would you like me to?
Well, I'll just begin by saying that we heard the board suggesting that if we were going to have a work session, that it would make more sense to do it before the board meeting rather than after. And then based on the way we do our Friday notes and communicate with the board, we'll have those questions by then. And so possibly even, could still add them in Friday notes for record, but really the questions could actually just be discussed like the board likes to do anyway, in periods where they want to hold a work session. Mr. Daler has suggested that we not hold a work session unless absolutely necessary. But the point of holding that work session right before a board meeting was so that we could engage in the dialogue. And so 7 to 8 seemed like a good time because it's on a Friday right before the Monday board meeting. So, and that's where my team and I, when we were asked what our thoughts were, that's where that originated from for us.
To assist with the explanation of the timing, our board packet is released to us by board policy, typically the Wednesday prior to a meeting. We then have until, and usually that has been Wednesday afternoon, we have until noon on Friday then to ask follow-up questions. The hope is that we would be able, as you know, to release the documents onto the website in advance of the meeting as early as Friday, as late as Monday. And the difficulty comes into fitting a work session in that very narrow time that allows board members adequate time to review the documents, formulate questions, present those in public, and ask our staff to try and answer them, but also maintain the level of transparency to the community that we've been working towards. So that was the purpose and the timing. There's really not a lot of extra days in there. So that was the conversation that Dr. Greiner and I had about the timing as well. Did that adequately answer your question?
It did. I have a second question.
Go ahead.
When will we determine if they are needed?
That's a good question. Do you have an opinion?
I don't have an opinion on that, no. They're the board's work sessions. I don't have an opinion. Truly, I mean, the board would need to determine if they needed that work session.
I would.
When do we make the decision if it's needed or not?
So what I would suggest to you is that members who desire to hold a work session would send a message to me as the board chair and ask that we schedule that. And then if, along with the content that you feel would be appropriate for that work session, and then we would, the board officers and I, as our task, would make that decision with Dr. Greiner on whether or not a board session or a work session needed to be held. Alternatively, it could be held in the regular meeting, or it could be decided in the regular meeting prior to, if we have an adequate ability to identify what might come up in the future. We don't always know, but we could always try that. Any other questions? Comments about the schedule? Okay, we'll take a vote. All those in favor of approving the proposed modification to the board meeting calendar for adjusted work sessions, as well as the addition of the public hearing in September and the adjustment of the spring break, the March meeting to avoid spring break. Those are the things on the table there. All those in favor of approval of that, please indicate with a show of hands. That motion carries 6-0, Mrs. Julian. We will move on to public comments on non-agenda items, and we do have 3 individuals who have signed up for that. The first is Gail Charlotte. I missed an agenda item. No, I didn't. Oh, I'm very sorry. Excuse me. Ms. Charlotte, my apologies. I've not read my own agenda. We will move on to our next agenda item regarding public comments. Mr.
Thank you. So a little bit background. We talked about this last meeting just for discussion purpose, but today I'm going to submit 2 motions. And the background, little bit background is back to 2000.
Start with just the basic motion. You'll get a second, and then you can explain what you're wanting to do there.
I want to submit 2 motions. One motion is remove this from the agenda. 2 motions regarding our agenda. One is remove this the limitations of current agenda item for the first opportunity of communication from the audience. So if you look at this agenda, that's my first motion to remove that. The background is.
You made a motion. We want to do that. Is there a second for this motion?
Oh, okay.
A motion from, or a second from Mrs. Mumford. Now, if you would like to just explain what you want to explain about this first motion you're making, that would be helpful.
So now the background is back to 2000 last year. We have the new regulations regarding the public comments for specifically for school board, and which is IC 5-14.1.5-3, and basically there are 2 things. The first things are governing, I just read that out because this is related to the first motion I provide. The first is a governing body may adopt a reasonable rules to governing the taking of oral public comments at a meeting. And regarding these reasonable rules, we Indiana Public Access Counselor's Office, they have some case regarding how to interpret these so-called rules. So basically, they say you can set up time and place and manners. You have to be use decent manners, speak to the chairman, that kind of thing. And specifically, I'm talking about the case number 22-FC-124. So in that case, the PAC opinion regarding these general rules, basically they think limited public comments on the agenda item is not belong to the reasonable rules. So I think maybe we will be better off to remove these limitations. I think at least after we remove these limitations, at least we have 2 benefits. One is we can avoid any possible unnecessary scrutinies from the public access counselors. I mean, they already have case interpret that clause, which exclude the limitations. Another thing which is a bigger benefit, in my opinion, is we create an open and more welcome environment for our school board meetings. And I know there's take a lot of courage for people stand up and walk over here, sit here, and share some comments. And I think whatever they share, there must be something very important for them. So we want to have open and more welcoming environment, so our committee members can come to share, so they don't need wondering, whether or not the issue concerning me really belong to any agenda items. So that's my the rationales before this motion. Thank you.
Any other, Mr. Marley?
I'd like to ask Jesse a question. have you seen our agenda, or do you have it in front of you now? Are we compliant from a legal standpoint currently? Not to put you on the spot.
So the agenda you put together is legally compliant for that reason alone. If your question is specific to public comments and where they fall, is that the gist of the question?
I just wanted to make sure that our agenda and our language was correct and we're not outside the lines. So it sounds like we're perfectly fine where we are. We also have opportunity for non-agenda commentary at the end of the meeting. So I think we've covered it. It's just not at the first.
Yes, so the law says that you're required to allow public comment before a final vote is taken on an item. So if something is conceivably up for on the agenda for action, you would need to allow that comment to occur beforehand. If it's not on the agenda, presumably you wouldn't be taking action, though I do want to point out that the public access counselor's opinions point to the fact that an agenda is not a set in stone framework, right? You can always amend the agenda and add things to the agenda. So one of his concerns in having a policy that would limit public comment to only agenda items is that you would have public comment be missed that otherwise would be allowed.
Are there any other comments or questions about this motion? Mrs. Mumford?
I think this would be a courtesy to our community. For example, the work session that we had last week, we had a community member that wanted to share a comment and had to wait over 3 hours to make that comment. I don't, when you go to if a community member would like to share a comment, I don't think we need to say, it makes any difference to us if they say it at the beginning or the end. And so I think giving them that courtesy, if they would like to show up at the meeting and give it and then have other responsibilities and need to leave, I don't see why that makes any difference to us, but could be a huge courtesy to a community member.
Any other comments or questions about this item? Mr. Schott?
So Mr. Wong says there's a second motion coming. It's kind of hard to vote for one without knowing what the second one is and the repercussions. I don't know how we work through that.
That's a great point. Mr. Wong.
I can merge them together if you think.
Yeah, if you would like to, perhaps we can table this one while we hear the second, and then we can come back and make a vote on this first motion, if that would be preferable. Okay.
Or maybe we can merge them in one motion.
Go ahead, Mr. Wong, with the second.
The second one basically also relate, this is another, they also same regulations. I just read that, however, the taking of oral public comments on a topic must occur before the governing body takes final actions on the topic. So basically, no, I should provide the motion. Okay, sorry about that. I think I should provide the motion first. Okay, so sorry about that. So another motion I want to submit, maybe we can merge them together. Basically, we want to move this, for example, for this agenda item, which is an item number 4, communication from the audience. So I will submit a motion to move this item before the item number 2, the routine business, before that item. So basically, we change the sequential of this agenda. We move this communication from the audience before any final actions we took.
Okay, so your first motion is to change the communication from the audience to be on all items, not just current agenda items. And the second part of that is that you would like us to move that communication from the audience ahead of approval of routine business. Just as a point of clarification, it is in our official school board policy that the first thing we must do in our meeting is approve the agenda and minutes. It's the minutes really that have to be approved before we conduct any other new business. Mrs. Austin, you had your hand up?
Yeah, and wow, I'm loud. There's a good reason why that has to be done in that order. If you don't have an agenda, then you don't have a map for where the meeting's supposed to go. And if you haven't agreed upon what happened in the previous meeting, then you can't go on and call business unfinished or not. So Robert's Rules of Orders were set up so that meetings would run in a certain sequence, and there's reasons why they run in the sequence they do. And as much as I would love to, make everything as easy as possible for our community, I think we need to have that respect for the fact that they're set up this way for a reason. So I would say the earliest we should be doing communication from the audience would be before unfinished business, I guess, but not before approving the agenda or the minutes.
Okay. Mr. Schott.
Probably keep them two separate motions because they're fairly unrelated. Related, but pretty different. So.
I would agree. Mr. Wong, are you amenable to keeping them be separate? Okay.
I'm okay. Yeah.
Are there any other comments regarding the second motion by Mr. Wong in terms of moving the location of communication from the audience on our agenda? I'm very sorry, I will get some knowledge here from Ms. Billingsley.
So I did want to share that consistent with the language of the law, CCHA's guidance is to hold public comment before your first action item. So that would include those regular items like the consent agenda or pieces like that, because the law is so particular in that it must come before a vote is taken. And that can include even those very routine items.
Including the agenda and the minutes.
Yes.
Okay. Mrs. Mumford.
So I reviewed our policy that says, like you said, the minutes should be approved as the first order of business. This is in all school district policies in Indiana as I researched, but a large majority of them do allow public comment before they do the agenda. So TSC, for example, they do public participation, so it's recognition, highlights, patron comments, and then they approve the minutes and everything else. And so even though in some ways I can see how this could be understood, that you can't put the comments before approving the minutes. In reviewing other school districts, this is actually a common practice.
And Ms. Billingsley has indicated there's a reason why for that. Okay. Anybody else? Any comments? Mr. Wong, you've already spoken, so I have to get from everybody else here. Everybody else is good. Okay. Mr. Wong, do you have any closing thoughts on this before we take a vote?
No, I think back to your question regarding our policy, which is defined, we have to go through the meeting minutes first. And I think basically, as Jesse said, this agenda is optional. That's one thing. Another thing is by law, our bylaw also said if our policy or part of our policy is not in line with the laws. I think when you say laws, include Indiana code. So basically, my understanding this also the Jesse Indiana code saying the public comment should be before any final actions. So basically, that our school policies is not in line with Indiana code. So I would submit that policy to our school policy committee to kind of review that and see if we can we still keep that clause. And back to this motion. Another thing I think I need to explain this is they say final action. When you say final action in open door laws, that means the votings. So we have voting for the agenda, we have voting for the meeting minutes. So that's I think the public comment should be for that. And the benefit, as I said, one is if we do this, we will fully comply with our IC code, Indiana code. Another, which is a bigger benefit of our school board is we serve our communities, we serve our school students, our communities. We want to listen to them first and see what their concerns, what they want to share with us, and then we can start our working. So that's two rationales behind this motion. Thank you.
Mrs. Austin.
I would like to move the item to committee. I think it would be appropriate to send this to the policy committee and for the policy committee to review our policies and bring before the board revised policies that are in line with the code and then also an example of what the agenda would look like if it were changed. And then we can vote on it all at once rather than moving things around and striking words and being confusing. So I would like to move to committee, and I need a second.
I'll second that.
Cool.
Second from Mr. Marley. Okay. I believe it is appropriate to move it to committee. I have no idea what Robert says to do about this. Am I supposed to take a vote here? Anybody know?
If we move to a committee, we get to discuss it and then vote, and then we go backwards in order through.
Okay. So the question, what we're talking about is what the next course of action. So I've got a couple of choices here. I can put it out there and have everyone vote on your motion number 1 and your motion number 2. And then also what Mrs. Austin has requested, that we just refer it to committee. The problem is, Mr. Wong, I want to make sure, I think you've made some good points here tonight. I want to make sure that it is discussed fully and is in line with our policy. If we vote on it, it is not passed, then it isn't something you can bring up again. And so I'm trying to make sure that it gets its day. And I don't know if today is the day. And I have no idea what Robert says about that. So that's where we are.
A question, quick question. Regarding Ms. Austin's suggestions, move to refer to the committee, what that means?
That means that pretty much what you just said, that the whole where in the agenda should, so both motions you've made, where in the agenda should the public comment period be, and what should the public comment period be in terms of current agenda item or non-agenda item, all of that will go to policy committee, and policy would get together and prepare for the board any policy changes that might need to be made, as well as a sample agenda for everyone to review. So it's just basically doing a little homework and then bringing it back again in August.
Do you want to ask the legal counsel advice on that too?
Yes, we would definitely go and ask legal counsel for advice on that, as well as perhaps training on Robert's rules. Do you have a comment now?
I wonder if, Mr. Wong, you might amend your motion.
Yeah, if that's the case, probably we can forward this to our school policy committees, and then probably I will withdraw my my motions because I won't go through these procedures if we already have it. So did that make sense?
Yes. That does. Well done, sir.
Okay.
Okay. So if you will, you're going to withdraw those. We will refer these to policy committee. This will be old business when we come back and discuss it in our next meeting in August.
That makes sense. Makes sense. Great. Thank you.
And we will also work closely with legal counsel to get a good answer on that.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay. So now we're going to move on to public comment. No, we're still not there. I'm confused because the agenda item says public comments. This is where I'm struggle busing today. We are going to move on to information to the board. I have one piece of information to share with the board. Mr. Wong pointed out to me that in the June meeting, when I offered comparison text based on the transcript, that he did indeed say some things that I did not read that he said in the transcript. So for clarification, item 1 of his statement were said at 6 minutes and 31 seconds and 6:52. Words were not exactly what I said in the meeting, but the immediate context subject at that moment for readability of minutes. Item 2 was at 49:40 through 1:08:05, and item 3 was at 1:08:40 through 1:09:40. As Mr. Wong has so appropriately pointed out to us, that the live stream recording of our meetings is the most accurate and complete record of our meetings. It is publicly available online. The transcript obviously did not capture his words, and I did not cross-check with the transcript or with the transcript to the recorded video. As you know, our meetings have been quite long. So Mr. Wong graciously corrected my error. And if anyone would like to reference those now, that is on our live stream, so you have the ability to do so. Mr. Wong, did my description of that meet your expectation?
That's right. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you for your clarification.
Absolutely. Happy to clarify that. I do not have any other information to the board at this time. let's go ahead, please, with board and superintendent's reports. Dr. Greiner, would you care to go first tonight?
I'd be happy to do that, and
Thank
I
you.
just will keep it short and sweet because we are focusing heavily right now on our referendum. And so I just wanted to let you know that since our work session, we've had a few questions related to the referendum from staff and community members. We appreciate questions always, and we plan to respond to those, but we're also going to work very closely with Daily PR so that they can get that posted on as we develop that referendum website component. And then we can also make sure that we respond directly to individuals. So I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have one report that I will give on committee reports on behalf of Dr. Yin. She was traveling and I attended the Parks and Rec meeting on her behalf. So just a few updates from there. Summer camps at Park and Rec have been going extremely well. They have about 120 children through their building on a daily basis. A very successful program. The after-school program registration, you'll be interested to know, it filled in 2 days. So it definitely indicated a need for that program in our community. The city is still in search of a single bus driver to run the routes on those. And they asked that I pass along their gratitude. The collaboration has been exceptional with Dr. Greiner and our central office staff. We have been wonderful to work with, as has the city. And then finally, they're excited to announce that the Case and Family Park was finally approved, if you missed that in the news. And I suspect that Mr. Marley will discuss that in his RDC report. I'm sorry.
Finally had some.
I'm sorry. And then finally, they asked us to help spread the word that the Lilly Nature Center has been very, very active this summer. They are grateful for the community volunteers for supporting the work of the Nature Center and the Celery Bog. And the Celery Bog is anticipated to continue to be open and a valuable resource to the community. So we'll move on then to the community report.
From the Education Foundation, lots of exciting stuff going on. The classes of 1978, 1983 are holding reunions this month. Both classes will be touring the junior, senior high school. I believe this was mentioned last month, but I'll repeat it. Homecoming will be Friday, September 15th. There'll be an all-alumni tailgate after the parade and prior to the football game. And if you had not heard, the football program will be celebrating its 100th anniversary for the 100th year of West Lafayette football. Several groups will be honored as part of that milestone, including championship teams and former cheerleaders. The Devil's Advocate newsletter is at the printer and will be mailed very soon. Actually, might hit mailboxes yet this week. And Wendy Ayler, Executive Director, will be working with 2 more classes on creating new scholarships for our students. And both of these requests to create these scholarships grew out of their reunions. So again, great stuff going on with the foundation.
Thank you, Mr. Schott. Dr. Yin is not here for the curriculum report. Mrs. Roth, is there anything that you would like to report related to
No.
curriculum?
No.
Okay.
We finished our meeting in June and then we'll start back up to meet again with the new school year.
Thank you very much. All right, finance external, Mr. Marley.
Okay, here we go. First of all, road updates. Jaeger Road's supposed to be finished in time for school. Lindbergh Road is going to be done in time for school, and so is Grant Street. So that's big news. Rachel stole part of the thunder here. Case and Family Park out there on Cumberland Avenue is going to be huge. Trails, a nice sized lake, kayaking, paddle boats, you name it. It's going to be a great recreational area. We had construction schedule. It's about 21 months. That's what they're telling me. Weather cooperating, it will be done. So go out there and enjoy Case and Park when it's done. One last thing, opening request for statement of qualification for our Public Safety Center Architecture and Engineering. We had no less than 13 offers of qualifications for that. So a lot of competition for designing our new public safety building. So more on that later. Stay tuned. That's it.
Thank you very much. Moving on to finance internal, Mr. Wong.
Yes, regarding the final, I don't have too much update, but I do have some conversations with Michelle, so I get a lot of clarifications regarding the financial issues surrounding this referendum. So thank you for your information. I really appreciate that. And and also today I was really moved because our community, there's a lot of support from our referendums. So I think we have very good communities. And from my some other reporting is about my trainings. So last month I finished the new board on-board trainings. So that's about one on-site training and four online trainings. So last month, the last time of trainings. So the whole training series very good for me to learn how school board works. So that's make a lot of help for me. So I can serve our school board, serve community in a better way. And another training seminar I also joined is regarding the school ISBA's seminar. It's called the School Budgeting and Finance Seminar. And there are some key informations shared in that seminar. For example, that's the Larry DeBar shared the whole economy situations in U.S. and in our state, and some regarding the revenues from schools. And we also have one senator, Indiana senator, and one representative, they shared their opinions regarding educations, about how to distribute the fund, charter schools, private schools, that kind of thing. So that's pretty good information sharings. And I also have the ISBA, they also have update about, I think, 11 financial related new legislations. So I just think that's very informative and also is very helpful for us. And the last one, there's kind of panels. The superintendent, several superintendents join the panels, and they share what make them wake up in the midnight. And the most things I heard is they say regarding the curriculum materials cost, and the state basically they don't want school charge anything for the textbook to the students, but the fund from state is not enough to cover the cost. So I think that that's another reason we really need this referendum. So that's overall, that's a pretty good trainings. We have totally 270 people join that meeting, and very helpful. So that's all my report. Thank you.
We have all that, don't we? We'll move on to internal systems. Mrs. Mumford, do you have a report tonight?
The committees that I'm on did not meet in the last month, so I don't have anything to report.
Thank you. Legislative and Policy, Mrs. Austin.
I'm in the same position, but since it's my turn, I'd like to thank Dr. Yin for making the effort to be here from the other side of the planet. I had a hard enough time with technology from Wisconsin, so I'm very impressed with your commitment, and I appreciate you being here tonight.
Thank you. I agree with that as well, Dr. Yin. Okay. There's one other thing, but we're going to get to communication from the audience first, and then I'll follow up with Mrs. Cronk. We have two people who have signed up, finally, I'm sorry, to speak on non-agenda items. 3 people, 4 people. Sorry, different notations here. First is Gail Charlotte. That much I'm clear on. Not really. There's a lot of different notes on this piece of paper here I'm looking at. Please go ahead, Ms. Charlotte.
Okay. Again, I am respectful of your time, so I will be 3 minutes brief. I'm Gail Charlotte. I'm a citizen of West Lafayette. I reviewed the video of the past 6 meetings and the opinion pieces of one board member prior to coming to the meeting tonight. As I said before, I've served on this board. As such, I feel I can provide some helpful suggestions to all board members. Number one, you are one of 7 people on this board. You are not viewed as individuals by the taxpayers. The public sees you as the board. If you succeed or fail, it's because all 7 members have worked together. Respect your leadership. Leave your personal agenda at the door. The people outside of this room will respect you more for it if they see you putting kids first. Number 2, the board agenda needs to be set before the board meeting. If any one board member wants to add an agenda item, they need to do so before the meeting. Using precious time during a meeting to argue for adding a late item is not productive or helpful. Number 3, if you have questions about an agenda item, especially one that deals with an individual, please ask questions about it before the meeting. I love that you're having work sessions. I personally found the way some of you dealt with the reappointment of Anastasia Kurtulis to the West Lafayette Library Board offensive and unnecessarily demeaning to her. Do better. Number 4, encourage citizens to contact all board members and the superintendent with their concerns. Provide them with email addresses. But please, when answering a citizen, and I do expect you to respond to citizen queries, CC other board members so you all know how other people are responding. Any official board response comes from the president. Number 5, I spent at least the first year of my time on the board listening and learning. I did not try to immediately become an officer on the board, nor did I write anything to share publicly about my time on the board because I knew there were limits to my knowledge and I was afraid of getting something wrong. Realize that what you might have thought prior to coming on the board might actually be wrong. Learn and be better. Number 6, people have trouble discerning what is an actual fact when it comes from a public official. Okay, the past is past. That's number 7. This new superintendent is just that. He's new. Anything that happened before him has no bearing on what Mr. Greiner is doing and achieving. Bringing up past administrations over and over is tiresome and unproductive. Number 8, finally, do not have a website dedicated to your opinions about this board and the work they do. Again, you're one of 7. Your board, your job to taxpayers is to function as a board. You are all doing the very best you know how, and you are all doing this thankless job because you care about every child. Be supportive of each other and choose kindness. Thank you.
Thank you. A little, right? The crickets aren't bad. Okay, Mr. Collar, I'm not clear if you also want to speak now. Thank you. Moving on to Laura Marie Williams, but I believe I saw her leave. Okay. And so then the last is Daniel Troy Janes.
Well, thank you very much, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here, a privilege, in fact. I'm Daniel Janes, a West Lafayette alumnus, class of 2016. I remember very fondly my education here and the principles in which it instilled in me, which have led me to my current, career profession, studying law. I recall being taught in those classes that the foundation of good governance, particularly in the American system, is free and open debate among the people, particularly speech. That's a pretty foundational lesson. I care about it a lot. I'd like to say on the outset that I'm very thankful for the collegiate and civil spirit that's prevailed at this meeting, particularly among the board. And I support the referendum process. But I regret to say that I see the referendum being pressed into the service of a unity, or at least to call for a unity that is anything but. At this past work session, I didn't really plan to talk today, but at this last work session, I saw a display that was frankly repulsive to my democratic instincts. On several occasions, Councilmember Mumford was called out on the floor simply for publishing opinions that are not signed and stamped by the collective body. On one occasion, Ms. Witt remarked that she would prefer the summaries to stop. Ms. Austin at one point remarked that they were misinformation. Mr. Marley at another point accused her of writing before she had gotten the opinions of everyone in the room. And to such who hold such opinions, I would simply state that you have the same pulpit as she does, and are free to counter speech you disapprove of with more speech. When I learned here, that was what I was taught was the American way. I would like to ask if I was miseducated. or if the highest people in authority in this district don't actually believe what their teachers taught me. Now, for one, I find the summaries to be useful. I find them to be enlightening elucidations of a process that is generally and unfortunately opaque, sometimes by necessity, sometimes not. They teach me things I otherwise would not have known, including the difficulties carrying out the promises of the last referendum, the disputes surrounding them, and the disputes regarding electoral laws and funding in this particular district. I wouldn't have known about that. I'm grateful that I do. I think these summaries, such as they are in fact exemplary modes of communication from elected office holders to the citizens who voted for them as, contrary to some opinions, individuals. You are elected as individuals, so you work as a body, just like any other deliberative body in an American republic. And individual opinions, especially those of office holders, deserve to be heard and deserve to be considered as iron sharpens iron in a way to coming into truth and the idea of what's the right thing to do. Unity is a powerful virtue. So's truth, so's honesty, and so's open deliberation, and they should not be cast aside for pragmatic political purposes. I have little else to say on the matter. I would simply ask that you set a good example for me and for all those you educate or have educated in the past. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to future meetings. And this is my question to you, Mrs. Cronk, given what we just approved. The very next meeting that we would have would be in addition to our agenda here. It is for August 11th, work session, the 2023 budget workshop, 7 to 8 a.m. Is that correct?
That's what I thought, September 20th.
That's what I thought.
Right, but that's what the agenda, I'm looking at the agenda or at the meeting schedule and I was like,
That's a little early for me to share everything.
okay.
We're addressing that in September, right?
Yes.
Correct.
We wanted to clarify.
Okay, thank you. I didn't want to announce a meeting that we may not have. So we may need to have a work session for Friday, the August 11th at from 7 to 8 a.m., but that is not scheduled at this time. The next scheduled meeting is the regular board meeting scheduled for Monday, August the 14th at 6 p.m. Remember, we've changed our meeting time to 6 p.m. here in the Happy Hollow LGI room. Upcoming dates of interest, Tuesday, August the 8th. No teachers may yell at me for this, is the professional day. Welcome back to staff. And Wednesday, August the 9th is the first day of school for our students. Just as information for the public, board documents will be posted on the WLCSC website as early as Friday afternoon and no later than on noon Monday prior to the board meeting. Documents are available on the WLCSC website, and information about that is available on the agenda. Video, audio, and transcription will be available on the WLCSC website within 7 to 10 days following the board meeting. As a reminder, the transcript of the meeting is a non-edited electronic transcription generated by YouTube from the live stream of the meeting. These have not been reviewed or edited for accuracy and should not be considered official minutes of the meeting. Typographical errors and omissions, just as we discussed tonight, should be expected. With that, I would like to make a motion for adjournment. Motion by Mr. Wong, second by Mr. Marley. All those in favor of adjourning our meeting tonight? That motion carries. We are adjourned.